Hello, hello, hello. It's Sarah Noel Block, your host of Tiny Marketing, and I am here today to talk to you about the why behind content themes. How do you drive revenue with content marketing? You need to hit the sweet spot with your content marketing. What your audience needs and the solution your business provides. That's where it's at. By creating content that doesn't stick to your themes, you dilute your message and attract the wrong people. Traffic is great. Sure, you might get traffic, but sales are better. In this episode, we spoke with Ben Saylor about why you need to create content themes and how it impacts revenue. And before we go on, you don't want to miss our first episode on this topic with Ben, where we talked about how to create those content themes. So if you haven't watched it, the URL for that episode is in this description, and you'll want to check it out next. And we will be right up with that conversation. Hello, and welcome to Tiny Marketing. I'm Sarah Noel Block, and I teach small marketing departments that are tired of feeling overwhelmed and under-resourced how to build and manage an effective and efficient marketing strategy that works for them. You get expert marketing advice from someone who's been there, done that. Get ready, it's time to dig in. So why do you think it's important that brands have these content themes?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would say kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like if you don't have like themes in place or just like areas of topical focus or just like whatever, however you want to think about it, if you don't have something that's kind of guiding, the content that you're going to create or something that kind of puts some parameters on things, you really do run the risk of just trying to be all things to all people instead of being the right thing for the right people, And I think especially if we were to take like a marketing software company like CoSchedule, for example, if you were to just consider the entire wide world of marketing as being fair game, like you can talk about anything related to marketing in your content, that's going to open you up to just an overwhelming number of things you could potentially be creating content on. So you have to like narrow it down. Like, what are the things that are actually most important? What are the things that are actually most relevant to the product, to your customers? And then kind of go from there. If you don't have that kind of focus, you can spend a lot of time just going down a lot of really weird paths and just burning a lot of energy, creating a lot of content that might get a lot of eyeballs, might bring a lot of people to your site, but it's probably not going to ever convert any of them into a customer. Yeah. I think it can get kind of fuzzy though. Like, I think where things get confusing or just people just kind of start to feel like some of this stuff is just, or it can feel like it's hard to know like how far away from like your core use cases is too far away, for like your content. And there's not necessarily like, there's not always like a clear answer to that, but I think like one question that, we would try to ask ourselves at CoSchedule is just like, would someone who would buy this product, would they care about this thing? But beyond like, would they care about it, but would our product play any role in making that thing easier? And I think like those two questions can really help you like weed out things that maybe you shouldn't really be talking about.
If it's not going to sell something, if it's not going to lead people down the path to buy, then what's the point? You're spreading yourself too thin. You're spending too much time on marketing that isn't going to have an impact on revenue. And that's all that really matters in the end is revenue.
Right. I mean, it's like, so obviously like, your product is built to serve a certain set of problems. Your content should be focused on that same set of problems that your product is meant to to serve. Yeah, and like that's but it gets much more complicated than that, obviously, once you actually start kind of diving into the weeds of things. But that's probably like the easiest way I can think of to maybe explain like the best way to think about it. If there's just no possibility of someone using your product to do a certain thing, just maybe consider that to be out of bounds.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people fall under or into the trying to please everybody instead of actually wanting to repel some people. You want to have that attract and repel. So
Yeah.
Your audience is your people. They are the people who would buy your product. But
Right.
too many people are just trying to attract without that repel piece.
Yeah, I think especially like for startups, like it can be really easy to just think of your ideal customer as being anyone who's willing to give you money. And that more often than not just kind of gets you into trouble.
Yeah.
I think another piece of that too, though, is like as a content marketer, you might have limited, if any, input into helping your organization really get clear on its own product market fit. But I think as a marketer, you need to do the best you can to have as clear of an understanding as what you can attain of what your product market fit really looks like, which is always subject to change. But yeah, I feel like when it comes to like content themes, like and determining what a content theme should look like, most of the questions that marketers should be asking themselves really don't have anything to do with content at all. They have much more to do with your product and your customers, and those are really the things that you should come to understand first. But if you kind of approach things that way, then a lot of other questions will start to answer themselves much more easily.
That makes sense. I mean, you need to, before you sit down and do any copywriting, content, any marketing, really, you need to understand your audience and how they interact with your product, how your product solves their problem. And without that piece, you can't just go in and create all of the content in the world that it won't have any impact. It's useless.
Right. Yeah. It's and it can be tough too, particularly in startup environments, because so many of those things can be in flux, right? And so like you might be learning what your customers need from you at the same time that you're trying to figure out how you can educate them. So there's always going to be some of that push and pull, and you might not ever feel like you get things perfectly right, but that's fine.
That's marketing, is testing.
Seeing what works. Yeah, I think a lot of people, I think it's pretty common for marketers to kind of like look at people that they perceive as like thought leaders in the marketing space, and they just like see people that they think just have all the answers to everything, and that's almost never true.
No, they've just tested a lot.
Right. Yeah, like knowing how to ask the right questions is as valuable or more valuable than having the right answer. Yeah,
I think that right there is a good point overall. If you have the right questions to ask, you can figure out anything in marketing. You just need to have those right questions first, because you, as the marketer, you're not going to have the same insights as the product manager or whoever else that's the CEO. If it's like a service-based company, you need to be able to ask those right questions and probably be a good interview person where you can get the right answers out.
Yeah, I think that's like definitely true. Even if you don't have, like, you could have an average skill set, to be honest. You don't necessarily even need to be the best marketing practitioner. As long, like, if you know how if you know how to get at the answers that you're looking for, like that is so powerful.
Yeah, you're right on. So, is there anything else that you wanted to share before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I guess if there's anything I could just leave off with, I think like if you're trying to determine what your content theme should be, or how you would even begin, like I said, just start with your customers and start with your product. Those two things they'll tell you what your content needs to address.
Yeah, work backwards from there.
Yep.
How can everybody find you online? Where do you hang out?
I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to look me up, that's probably the best place to find me.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. I'm going to thank you, fine people, for joining me today and learning why you need to create content themes. I really hope that you came away from this episode with some actionable advice that you can use to increase revenue using content marketing. So if you like this episode, make sure to go to sarahnoelblock.com/newsletter and sign up for our weekly newsletter. It goes out every Tuesday morning. And remember to follow Ben on LinkedIn. The URL is in the description. And we will see you next week. Thank you.
Wife and I at our wedding, that was our intro music.
Nice.
For the wedding party.
Thank you for joining Tiny Marketing. I help tiny marketing departments create consistent content that builds trust with their audience. Book done for you content marketing at sarahnoelblock.com. Don't forget to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast app. And if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, make sure to hit the subscribe or follow button.